Okay. All right. I gotta, for those of you that know me well, I'm a big crybaby. So I don't know. I'm already ready to cry with what I'm looking at in front of me. This is like my entire life passing in front of my eyes, from Jimmy and Sheldrake, from high school to people through college to, oh my gosh, people in other lives, and my best friends and who I went to school with, my Kim and Molly and Vicky and BJ, and oh my God, and there's Pam from high school, and oh my gosh, this is incredible. Well, Laura, let you take over.
All right. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Laura Wills, and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Relations. I want to mention that I will be recording this webinar for those unable to join us at this time so that they can watch it later. If everybody could put themselves on mute for now. Later on during our talk, we will use the raise hand function, and we'll call on you at the end of the presentation. That way we can do this in a reasonable way here. First, I'd like to welcome the Director and Associate Professor of Dance, Sarah Skaggs. She's an internationally renowned choreographer from New York City and the Artistic Director of Sarah Skaggs Dance. She has received numerous fellowships, including ones from the National Endowment for the Arts and foundations such as Jerome, Harkness, Greenwall, and Rockefeller. Her work focuses on the relationship between the body and spirituality as impacted by social and political crises. And recently she completed a multi-year cycle on choreographic works dealing with the body and disaster, particularly with respect to September 11th. At Dickinson, she teaches dance history, modern technique, somatics, and choreography. And now I'll turn it over to Sarah to introduce our very special guest this evening, Mr. Vince Paterson.
Thanks, Laura. And welcome everybody. This is really exciting. And I've been at Dickinson for about 12 years. And Vince, you came to Dickinson, I think it was in 2010.
2010, yeah.
Yes, and we met each other then, kind of briefly, but you made an impact, and we've been saying ever since, oh, we've got to get Vince Paterson back to Dickinson. Well, I guess it took a pandemic to bring you back, so to speak. So thank you. Yes, so in reading Vincent's bio would take all night. So I am just going to highlight parts of the bio, and then we'll get into some questions that I've prepared for Vince. So Vince Paterson, I mean, as many as you probably know, but he has worked in literally every single medium in the entertainment business: film, video, opera, television, commercials, music videos, stadium, concert tours, Broadway, and I'm sure I'm leaving many things out. I really don't know of another choreographer of the 20th century who has that kind of talent and stamina to work across so many platforms. So that is, I think it's just really it's amazing. Vince is now featured in the Smithsonian publication, Masters of Movement, Portraits of America's Greatest Choreographers, which we will be teaching at Dickinson next year. Wow. Anyway, so we know Vincent for his groundbreaking work with Michael Jackson. He worked with Michael Jackson for over 15 years, creating some of the most iconic and spectacular music videos, such as Smooth Criminal, Blood on the Dance Floor, Black or White, The Way You Make Me Feel, just to name a few. He choreographed Michael, or Mike, as Vince calls him, in the Super Bowl halftime show in 1983, which, as you might remember, that Super Bowl, that halftime show was a game changer in terms of how halftime shows are, how they look. It was spectacular. It was over the top. It was just a huge amount of production values that we come to think of as normal now. For Madonna, he choreographed her Blonde Ambition tour, which, as you remember, the film Truth or Dare, which I saw many times, was based on. He also choreographed for Madonna. He choreographed Madonna in Express Yourself, Vogue, and her famous Marie Antoinette role for the MTV Awards. I'm only skimming the surface here, but these are the things I actually remember myself. So, in terms of films, he directed and choreographed all the musical sequences in the Lars van Trier's beautiful film Dancer in the Dark that featured Bjork and Catherine Deneuve. For movies, he worked with Mike Nichols. He choreographed sequences in The Birdcage that starred Robin Williams. And he also choreographed sequences in Closer, both directed by Mike Nichols. He choreographed for the film Evita, directed by Alan Parker. He also choreographed Kiss of the Spider Woman, directed by Hal Prince. So, I mean, the list goes on and on. Like I said, I could go on all night. So anyway, these are just some highlights and some things that are also a part of my cultural memory myself. So as for prizes and awards, his most recent awards, he's won a 2015 Dance Industry Award, where he was dubbed a dance icon. And in 2015, he won the Choreographer's Carnival Award for Choreographic Innovation and Inspiration. He's been nominated for many, many Tony Awards, MTV Awards, Emmys, and has won many American Choreography Awards. I'm just waiting for his Oscar for a Lifetime Achievement Award in choreography.
Well, the truth is, I really never won an award. I had those couple things that you mentioned were very sweet. They were kind of from the dance community, but I've been nominated for a lot of things, but I never won an Emmy. I never won a Tony. I never won MTV award even for my work with any of those people. I just am not an award person, I guess. But I just wanted to say a couple of things because I'm seeing these faces and it's just like blowing me away. Every time I go through another page, I see somebody else. I just saw Debbie and Frank. Oh my God, it's just, it's such an honor for you guys to ask me to be part of this, first of all. You know, I still think of myself as this guy from Brookhaven and just don't even know how it all happened that I got to go to Dickinson and then got to have this amazing career and have my life filled with such incredible people on this screen and those other people that I know. And it's also an honor that so many of you decided to take some time out of your day, especially during this crazy time, and just sit and listen to whatever we're going to talk about, which we don't know. Sarah and I had a very brief little conversation the other day, and I just said, you know, I've done a lot of interviews. I said the most interesting ones are really when the interviewee asks me questions that they want to know personally. And so I think that's kind of how we're going to start this, and we're going to play that way. And then after a little while, we're just going to open everybody's mic up if you want, by a hand raise if you want to talk and ask any questions or whatever. But you know, again, I'm just so moved and grateful for my life and for this opportunity to spend some time with all you people many of you who I love so much, whether I get to see you or not, you know, and many of you don't even know it, but you're on my refrigerator. I have pictures of everybody on my refrigerator, and people like BJ and Turco can attest to that because they've been here and they've seen you all. So anyway. Okay, Sarah, let's go.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to mention that I was reading your autobiography, Icon and Instincts, which everybody, it is a page turner. You must hit Vince's autobiography. It's fantastic. You know, so I was reading it and I was approaching it like, you know, like a dancer, like a choreographer myself. And I'm reading about your childhood in Brookhaven and outside of Philly. And I'm thinking, this is not a person who went to conservatories, who went to Juilliard, who had all this training to become, you know, who then later on became one of the most famous dancer choreographers of the 20th century in Hollywood. So I'm wondering if you, well, let me back up a little bit. So then in reading a little bit about your biography, I'm trying to think, you know, what is it about Vince Paterson that's so over the top? Because in Hollywood, everyone is extraordinary. So then I read about your childhood. In 8th grade, you were voted the boy most like Jesus. I'm thinking about like how Michael Jackson and Madonna appears to us larger than life. I'm like, that's it. That's what Vince is, larger than life. Reading about all of your interactions with all these different megawatt stars, you always were like, we're making something no one's ever seen before.
Well, that's funny, you know, and what you just quoted is a quote from Michael Jackson and Madonna. That was what they always said to me, no matter what I did for them. We want you to create something that the world has never seen before. Well, as an artist, you can't ask for something better. I mean, first, you're being paid well. Second of all, during the time period that I got to create with these people, MTV was beginning. Millions of people were watching my work. I was so fortunate and lucky in that regard, you know, and to be asked to create something the world has never seen before. As an artist, that's all you long to do, you know. But I think that maybe my first intro to being in the theater world was when I was voted Boy Most Like Jesus, because I had to lead the May procession down the street, Upland Avenue. And actually, rather than recite the prayer that every other, we were called Sacred Heart Boy. Rather than recite the prayer that every other Sacred Heart boy did, I wrote my own prayer and recited it. The only thing that didn't happen that day was that, you know, I really kept praying. I kept praying to God, just lift, you know, when I'm kneeling up there in front of everybody, can you just lift me this high off the kneeling pew, just this high, just lift me up a little bit. Well, that never happened. But anyway, I had a good time. And that was the beginning of it all, I think.
I think, yes, the beginning of these larger than life encounters.
Yeah.
But could you talk a little bit about your childhood, like what you encountered in terms of like art and the things you were exposed to that you attribute later on to your kind of very, very wild sort of vision of dance and choreography?
Sure. Well, where I grew up was kind of in a way on the, you know, people, what's the closest place we would know? And I say Swarthmore College, and people go, oh, Swarthmore College. But I always say, but I wasn't near Swarthmore College. We were on the other side of the tracks of Swarthmore College, you know. Right. So we weren't a home that had a lot of culture to it, except that my father and my mother loved music. They loved jazz, especially. When I was very young, I remember looking down from the upstairs bedroom where the boys slept, and the living room would be filled with, you know, people who they knew, other jazz artists, other jazz aficionados, some Black, some Latin, coming through the house, sitting down in the corner and listening to old jazz records and having little martinis or whatever they had and snapping their fingers. And, you know, I remember that. That was very cool. Music was always part of my life. And we had prints of things hanging on the wall that were probably not usual in Brookhaven, where I grew up. There was like Picassos and Modigliani's and things like this, you know. So, and in the kitchen also was that old, you know, the prayers, the hands in prayer, you know, that I think everybody had. But you know, we didn't go to plays. We didn't go to the theater. We didn't do that. We went to the movies on occasion, but not often. We were pretty poor. And my dad was a social dance teacher. So when he lived for us for my first 12 years, you know, I learned how to dance. And at that time, all of us who are here at this age know that dance was a different thing when we were young. Everybody danced. You went to every party, you danced. You went to confirmations. You went to First Holy Communions. You went to weddings. Everybody just danced, you know, out in the backyard for barbecues. It was just kind of a family thing, and it got into my blood, but it was never anything that I thought I would take seriously. It was just something that I did for fun. And, you know, in high school, it was kind of fun. It was a fun way to like get to dance with the cutest girls like Debbie Hallman and, you know, girls like that who, you know, I was a good dancer and they wanted to dance with me. And so it was great, but it was never part of my life. The thing that was part of my life was the theater. I went to Catholic high school for 8 years, and then I moved over to public high school when my parents were divorced. And I immediately got into theater in junior high school and absolutely loved it. I began being in every play that they had. And then when I got into high school, it was the same thing. I loved the theater. It was a tough life growing up in the house. There were 5 kids. I think mom had 5 of us by the time she was like 26 or something like that. And I mean, it's unheard of these days, but you know, she did the best to make a great life for us. And but you know, when you've got 5 kids and you're in a small little house, you know, and you're always looking for attention, I found it in the theater. And it was a great way for me to get all of that stuff out and really get a chance to be other people and play with that and live in a fantasy world. And I really, really loved it. But when I was thinking about going to school, theater wasn't really what I was thinking about, because we were poor. We were pretty poor. I mean, none of us, and all of us who lived at that time, I'm sure Jim and Deb can attest to it too, that, we didn't think of ourselves as poor or as lower middle class, but we really were lower middle class. And it was a struggle. So I figured that if I was going to go to college, and I worked my butt off to get high marks in school, and I participated in a lot of extracurricular activities so I could hopefully get some scholarships and stuff. I really looked at Dickinson primarily because it was attached to a law school. And I thought, okay, I love theater. I could be a trial lawyer. I love money. I'd love to make some money. I could be a trial lawyer. So all of these things were kind of leading me, and I thought, all right, Dickinson. And I got in, and I got a great amount of financial aid. And so I was fortunate enough to be accepted, and I went, and that was kind of how I moved from my young life into being into Dickinson College.
So in your first year, I mean, the stories of Dave Brubaker, I want to get to in a minute, but in your first year, did you take theater classes right away, or were you still kind of poking around, or?
Well, they didn't really have very many theater classes at that point. They had very, very little. Basically, it was just David Brubaker. There was no real theater department. They had a couple independent courses that you could take. I think there was maybe a set design or an acting one, but you didn't take acting class. It just meant that you participated in the plays, and you got credit for doing that if you were part of that. What happened for me my first year was I did audition. I started in freshman plays, but then David kind of broke the rules because freshmen weren't allowed to be acting in the Mermaid Players plays. But I was fortunate enough to be a good actor, and he asked me if I would be in the freshman in plays starting in my freshman year. So the second half of my freshman year, I was. And after my second year there, I figured I wasn't really interested in law anymore. I was really interested in being in the theater. That was all I wanted to do. And so I put together, I didn't know anything about dance, but there were a lot of friends of mine, and we thought, well, let's do something crazy. And, there's a lot of drugs around then, and, it was the hippie times, and we were all doing hallucinogens, and we were all crazy and out of our minds, but very creative. And so the first thing that we did, we put together a group, and we called ourselves the Mime Troupe.
Oh.
And this was the original members of the Mime Troupe.
Okay.
And then what happened is Marcel Marceau came to Dickinson, and I had a little meeting with him, and it was great. And then he invited me to come out to Chicago and, spend some time with him. And I did, and I spent a few days with him in Chicago, and I came back and I thought, I don't know, the mime thing's not really for me. So David Brubaker said, well, why don't you just take those people that want to do it and start another kind of company, like a, off the side of Mermaid Players thing. So I did. And of course, from all these lovely, sweet, adorable, very nice, we all of a sudden turned into this. Oh, and we wound up doing a piece of theater that was called The Serpent, that had been done by the Living Theater in New York. And it was pretty mind-boggling. It was participatory with the audience, and it was based on a lot of old legends. And and I can see here's BJ right here, and she's down there. But during my time at Dickinson, I did a lot of other plays. I have a couple pictures that I thought I would share. This is Susan Morrill Samuels and me in a play called R.U.R., Rossum's Universal Robots. here is my friend who I see on there, Molly Logan Huppick, and we are doing Imaginary Invalid by Moliere. And let me think. Well, this is a picture, very few people know this, but the famous actress, American actress, Frances Conroy, was started at Dickinson. And, you know, she did amazingly well. She left to go to Juilliard because we had no real theater department, and she left after her freshman year. But we did one play called Enough Stupidity in Every Wise Man by Ostrovsky. And here's a photo of that. And there's a picture of me kissing Franny's hand. Anyway, it was fantastic. It was incredible. And you know, we had the opportunity, David gave us keys to the theater if we wanted to go in at night and play and just create anything we wanted. It was fantastic. We had just an absolutely remarkable time. And it was something that changed my life. I realized that I had to do theater. So I auditioned to go to NYU, and I got in after my sophomore year, but I didn't get enough money, and we had no money. So Dickinson contacted me again because of David, and they offered me a huge scholarship to come and create the first interdisciplinary theater major. And that's what I did. And there were a lot of us, you know, Vicky Roach and Molly. I'm not sure if Molly graduated with a degree in theater or not, but did you, Molly? Yeah, Molly saying yes. But there was a small group of us. I think the first group of people graduated with that degree a year before us. We were actually the second year, and it was fantastic. I went around to a lot of the professors who taught, say, Spanish drama literature, and asked them if they would teach in English. Yes. So we had French drama, we had Spanish drama, we had German drama. On top of that, we had set designing class, acting classes. We could direct. It was a phenomenal time and a phenomenal group of creative people who, because of David Brubaker and Marge, his wife, amazing. I'll just show you one more picture. This is all of us hanging out backstage. There's Chuck Eldridge and a few other people I see, but there's Marge in the middle there, and there's me over here with the long hair, you know. But you know, they created a world where we could go in and just play, just find out who we were as artists, you know. And it was absolutely phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal. And out of that, I think more than any of the other things that happened to Dickinson, out of that creative group and collection and family that was created, so many of these people that are on here today we still love each other because of what we did together during those 4 years. Now, we were also there at another very incendiary time. This was the time of Kent State assassinations and a lot of, you know, the revolution, as we called it. And we really were at the forefront of that and marching all over the East Coast, whether it was Washington or New York or the Army War College. I don't even know if that exists anymore, but, you know, we really were a force to be reckoned with. You know, I remember also this gentleman, a friend named Jimmy Drake, who ran the theater for a long time after we left still. You know, he had a lot of his blood taken out, and he painted in the hallway, in the circular staircase of the Union, a painting that was done with his own blood, you know, as a protest to the war in Vietnam. And I also remember us sitting around in the cafeteria, I mean, in the snack bar cafeteria, when they started giving everyone numbers for the draft. And we would sit there and freak out, and because your number got called, and people would start screaming and crying and know that they were going to be yanked out of school to go to Vietnam. And I was very fortunate with that. I had a 276 was my number. So, you know, I never really had to deal with it past the horror and frightening time that led up to having your number called in the lottery. You know, it was pretty damn scary, but it was an amazing time to be in school, not only as a student, but as a a revolutionary, so to speak, and someone who really felt that Dickinson gave all of us an opportunity to really participate on so many different levels, from artistic to political, and brought people in, speakers. It was a phenomenal time to be there. Phenomenal.
Yeah, in reading your autobiography, it sounds like that, and it sounds extraordinary, and leads me to talk about, thinking about the liberal arts, and you came there, and then reading about your work after Dickinson, it just does seem like that was a real sort of watershed moment, where a place where you could just explode with this, your sort of total theater, like we call interdisciplinary theater. I mean, you just, and your everybody else with you were just pulling every kind of staging idea, sound, location, and that you had the opportunity to do that, which I see was played out in your work later in Hollywood in a certain way. But the kind of like the fertile soil was at Dickinson, it looks like.
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing that in a way it kind of spoiled me, Dickinson, and spoiled me because, with all of the choreography that I've done, I've never considered myself a choreographer. I've always found it hard to take that title. I've always thought of myself as a director because of the work that I did at Dickinson. And so what I brought to the dance world, I feel my greatest contribution to the dance world was guiding dancers to become actors.
Yeah.
So that they could learn that rather than just creating steps or following steps that I created, and I did create every step of every piece I've ever done. I didn't ask any assistants to do the work for me. I did it all. But the most beautiful thing was those opportunities of taking dancers who had no idea about acting, many who hadn't gone on to college, who went through high school, but their lives were about dance. 99% about dance, and they didn't know a lot about other arts or other life actually in general. And having a liberal arts education, it filled me with so much inspiring information. And if you just go back at anybody and look at the video of, well, I can't say video, Michael Jackson would kill me.
Right.
He called them short films.
Short films.
So if you go back and look at the short film of Smooth Criminal, for instance, we did so much acting work and so much acting preparation and character work that anytime the camera is on anybody, you never feel like you're watching a dancer. You feel like you're watching a character who happens to be moving beautifully, but still a character fully fleshed out. And this was because I gave them a lot of acting exercises. They had to write their own autobiographies. They had to give themselves a name and create a character for themselves. And when they were on the set, they had to only address each other as characters. But all of this came from David Brubaker, truly. All of this came from him. I mean, the inspiration that he put into my heart and soul I'm still using expressions that he taught me and lessons that he taught me about acting and good acting. And I feel it's my greatest contribution to the dance world, but it also kind of spoiled me a little bit, No,
I think I found that really interesting. And I think that really is your secret sauce in terms of the acting, because in watching all the videos, like all the dancers, I'm not just watching a jazz routine. I am watching feeling characters who happen to dance really well. Yeah. So I think that's really extraordinary. Thanks for putting some more, telling the story about that a little bit more. So one thing what I find interesting from a dancer myself is just this sort of story that maybe people don't know, but how you became a dancer. Is when you went out, you talk about going to Tucson, Arizona with a girlfriend, going to a dance concert, taking your first ballet class when you're 23. Now, this is somebody starting with dance at 23 and ends up with Michael Jackson. So this is a very interesting arc. And then when I was reading about how you got into the dance, of course, you're checking out library books on Nureyev and all kinds of things. You just go over the top with it. Then to train your body, you write about putting a broomstick behind your arms to better your posture, and then you had Coke bottles filled with sand so that you could increase your arch. I mean, it was, I was like, this is amazing. But could you talk a little bit about like how you became a dancer?
Yeah. Well, those friends in high school will know Karen Barner. My dear friend Karen Barner from high school. I was doing a play in at Society Hill Playhouse in Philadelphia by Jean Genet, and it concluded in January after I graduated from college the following January. And Karen wanted to leave Pennsylvania, and I wanted to leave Pennsylvania. We both wanted to go to a warmer climate. And so she had a car and she said, let's go. So we did. And we traveled around the South trying to find a place to stay. And we wound up staying in Tucson, Arizona, because a Spanish teacher who had become a friend of mine, John Draper, actually was living in Arizona, in Tucson at the time. So we stayed there and crashed. Karen eventually left and moved on to Colorado, but I stayed in Tucson. The only job I could get, I tried to get a job as an actor, I couldn't get it. I tried to go to 7-Eleven to apply for a job, but part of the 7-Eleven form that I had to fill out, you know, and I'm a very honest man, said, have you ever smoked marijuana? Well, I had to say yes. So of course they didn't hire me, you know, so I was jobless. I had nothing to do. All I knew was some ballroom dancing from my dad. And oh, by the way, if my dad had ever heard me call it ballroom dancing, he'd probably kill me, but because don't call it ballroom dancing, it's social dancing. So anyway, I knew how to social dance. So I went to Arthur Murray's dance studio in Tucson, and I met another family member who I see on here, my friend Olivia Rosenti, and she was teaching there. And I came in and I said I knew a little bit of basics. And so Olivia helped me learn all of the basic. You have 10 steps in each of the dances on each level that you graduate to. So Olivia taught me all the first 10 steps that I had. And so I spent the first couple years I was there, maybe a year and a half, ushering a lot of sweet, older, retired ladies in Tucson who had a lot of makeup on and a lot of turquoise jewelry and a lot of perfume. And I danced them around the dance floor. Well, on my way to there, often I would, almost every day, because I walked, I wasn't too far away, I would pass a little dance studio that was run by a woman named Stephanie Steigers. And I would hear this ballet music and I would just walk by and not pay any attention. And finally I thought, you know what, maybe I should do something for exercise. I've always just been a theater mole. I started to run cross country in high school. I was in a really bad car accident going into my junior year and broke my right foot in 5 places. So that kind of ended that career. But by the time I was 23, I thought maybe I should do something physically. And yeah, exactly as you said, I was like this. I was all hunched over. For those people that don't know about dance, when you sit on the floor and you spread your legs wide, it's called a second position. Well, this was my second position, you know. And when it came to touching your toes, if I could reach down and touch my hips, I was fortunate at that point. So what I did, I went in and I said, can I take a dance class? And she said, well, we don't really have adult classes yet, you know, but you can take with like these girls that are like 10 to 15. Why don't you try that? And I thought, okay, maybe there was a 16-year-old in there. And it was great because I was the only guy for a long time. Another kid named Abe came in eventually and he was fantastic, but I was kind of the only guy in these basic classes. And because I was an adult, I could jump higher and I could lift the girls. So everyone loved me. And it was so much fun. But then going back to Dickinson again, I thought, I need to approach this from the inside out. So I did. I went to the library. I got books out on Nureyev, on any dance ballet books I could find. And every time I went to take a class, I would put in my head, okay, so today I'm going to be Prince Igor, or today I'm going to be Prince Charming from Sleeping Beauty. So the way that I learned how to do my plies and things at the bar all came from inside, you know, I would imagine that I was this character, again, through theater work. That was the only way I knew how to approach it. So I did. I had a broomstick under the back of my arms as I walked all over. So I would open up my chest and pull my shoulders back. And I had a backpack with a big, thick telephone book that I would sit on every time I could and just kind of open and let the gravity pull my body open and stretch me to a second position very slowly. And yeah, and roll my feet. So I would, you know, I still have fairly flat feet, but I did a lot of work on them anyway at that time. And I started to dance. And Tucson was kind of a little hothouse of dance. You would never think of it, but there were all these small little companies that needed men, and men were a paucity. We were rare in the dance world, you know, especially back in the 70s. So I did that. I got to dance with a couple different companies, and it was like, you can take free classes with us if you dance with us. And I was like, great. And then my friend Olivia and I, there was a Moroccan restaurant and they wanted some entertainment. So the two of us and a belly dancer put together an evening, a little collective show where Olivia and I would do some cha-cha and a couple other, you know, kind of ballroom dances, and in between our costume changes, this other woman would come out and do some belly dancing, and you know, so I did everything I could to get by. Finally, I said, I need to move. I need to do this. Either I'm doing it or I have to give it up. You know, I had two options. I was getting older, and you know, I was 27, getting to be almost 28, and I thought, God, this is old for a dancer, you know, to start a career, but it was in my blood. I had no options. I had to do it. So I came to LA. I moved to LA, and you know, it was kind of tough at the beginning. I had one friend here, a Black guy who was an ex-Vietnam vet and the biggest screaming queen you could ever meet in your entire life. But the guy had the biggest heart in the world, and he offered me a space on his living room floor where I lived with him. His name was Roy, with a girl who was a streetwalker. Excuse me, let me get rid of this. And a streetwalker and her two French poodles. And so Roy, this girl, her two French poodles, and I all shared a one-bedroom apartment in the heart of Hollywood. And that's what I did. My whole life was over in the corner on a sleeping bag, and everything I had was in one duffel bag. And I did that, and I auditioned, and I had $2,000 exactly that had been left to me. That was all I owned in the world. And I used that to take classes and eat, and help pay a little bit for the rent, but they didn't even ask me for money because they knew I didn't have anything yet. I auditioned for everything I could possibly get, everything you can't even imagine, from dancing marshmallows to I can't dressing up in a dog costume. I mean, come on, you know, it was ludicrous, but this was what I had to do. I knew I had to do it. And, you know, I was down to, I hadn't eaten in 2 days actually. And a good friend took me to lunch, and I saw a sign that said waiter wanted. And I thought, this is it. I have to stop it all and become a waiter. And that's it. So I went to take my last dance class. I was going to come back and apply to be a waiter that evening. And someone called me, a choreographer called the studio where I was and said another choreographer had given him my name. He needed one more guy for a show he was doing. Can I come and watch you in class? He came and watched me in class for 20 minutes and took me out and gave me my first job. And now I'm going to cry.
Oh.
Anyway.
But it's a touching story, and just that's why I'm saying you really, like, no is not in your vocabulary. You just go beyond, larger than life. And you know what, I was so Vince, when I was reading, that's why I thought that story was interesting, like for how you got into dance and trained into LA. And I know you worked with Shirley MacLaine early on, and she also hired you. And then, you know, we enter the Michael Jackson phase when he hired you for Beat It, right?
No, he was one of, it was actually kind of a group selection. It was Michael Peters, who was
Right.
kind of my mentor.
Right, Michael Peters.
He did the major selections, but Michael Jackson had to approve, absolutely.
Right. And then in reading your autobiography, I just got a sense that I had never really known about how close you and Michael Jackson became. And in watching the videos and watching the two of you rehearse, I think we think the choreographer just comes in and lays the movement on the dancer, but there's such an incredible, intimate kind of collaboration between the two of you. I think between the way you dance and the kind of, I think you, well, I don't want to make these bold statements, but I think that we think of Michael Jackson as an incredible dancer, but you're very responsible for that, as I see. Watching Michael Jackson as a child in Jackson 5 to where he came, and then watching the two of you work, I wondered if you could talk about what was the collaboration like in the studio with him, you know, making moves back and forth. Could you talk a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, you know, every project was different, and I did. I worked with him for 17 years. So when I first started working with him, it was on Beat It, and I was assisting Michael Peters and the lead, you know, one of the lead gang leaders in it. And Michael Jackson at that time, when he came in, was this scared, shy, quiet guy who came in by himself. I think somebody drove him and left him off at the front of the dance studio, and he came in and nobody stopped him. Nobody asked him for an autograph, nothing. And he came in, he never said much of anything. He learned the choreography quickly, and that was the first situation we had. The reason I got to be closer to him was because I was the assistant. And the way that worked was that Michael Peters would create the choreography with Michael Jackson in the room slow down. Michael Peters would create the choreography with me in the room, and we would work it out together. I would be his clay. He was the sculptor.
Mm-hmm.
When he figured out what he had, we then brought Michael Jackson into the room, and then Michael Peters would first show everything to Michael Jackson. Then Michael Peters would leave, and it would be Michael Jackson and me. And then I would be the one who would break down the movement and really clarify everything. And the beautiful thing about Jackson was that he was as fanatical about movement as I was. So if there was, I mean, in the same way we hear about Fosse, you know, if Fosse wanted the third finger bent, you know, you had to bend the little finger only, you know, well, that's what it was like with Michael Peters. And so I got to work that way with Michael Jackson from the beginning. The second time was Thriller. And this time I didn't have to audition because everybody knew me. But I got to spend a lot more time with Michael Jackson this time. But when he came in this time, what was so much fun was where the first time through Beat It, he was so quiet and shy and didn't say too much. This time when he came into the room, he was, you know, Beat It had gone through the roof all of a sudden, and he was Michael Jackson, not one of the Jackson 5. And so he, you know, he had a few things to say to Michael Peters. He would say, well, I think maybe something on this beat would be a little bit better. And then before he saw what we had done, he said, he walked into the room and he said, listen, before you show me anything, I just want to say, I really want these zombies to be scary. I want them to be real scary, you know? And so we showed him what Michael had put together, Michael Peters, and he said, yeah, that's exactly right. I love it. So then we worked, and he was a little more open. And this is where I said, he'd say, well, what about on this beat instead of this beat? And so he worked that way, and we got to do that. And then my relationship with him grew a little bit more, because when we were actually on the set shooting Beat It, which was outside at night, freezing cold, we were there all night long. He was so shy, he would sit in his trailer, and I would tell the dancers, go over to his trailer, knock on the trailer, go talk to him, you know, or I would go over to his trailer and I would say, Mike, come on out, come and hang out with everybody. Come on, let's have fun. And then he would come out and everybody would talk to him, and then he'd start to talk to the dancers, and he really, really loosened up. So I think that was why when Smooth Criminal came about, he called me, and I was totally blown away because I had really very little experience to do something like this, and for someone like Michael Jackson. But you know, he called me up and and I'll just relate this funny story, but the phone rang. I was sitting at home and picked up the phone. Hi, is Vincent there? I said, who's this? It's Michael. I said, this is not Michael. Who is this? No, really, Vince, it's Michael Jackson. This is not Michael Jackson. Who the fuck is this? He goes, no, it really is. It's Michael Jackson. I said, oh my God, it is Michael Jackson. Oh my God, Mike, I'm so sorry for saying fuck. And he started laughing. So he invited me to come over to this recording studio where he was. And I went over and he played Smooth Criminal for me. He didn't have many lyrics. He had, you've been hit by a smooth criminal, and Annie, are you okay? That was all he had. He had no other words, no other lyrics at that point. So we just started talking, and at the end, he handed me a cassette. I know pretty much all of us on here will remember what cassettes were. A lot of kids I talk to today go, what's that thing? A cassette, but he handed me a cassette and he said, and I said to him, well, what do you want me to dance in this? And he said, no, I want you to come up with an idea for it, and I want you to choreograph it, and I want you to direct it. And he said, the only thing is, as I said at the beginning, I want you to create something that the world has never seen before. And I don't want you to put your ideas on the music. I want you to let the music talk to you. Mm-hmm. Let the music tell you what it wants to be. So I came back home and I listened and I listened and I listened and I listened for a couple of days, and I had these images, and I wasn't that familiar with a lot of Fred Astaire stuff. My friend Olivia and I had once watched a Fred Astaire thing, and we learned a little dance from Dancing in the Park, Dancing in the Dark it was, but it was a little park dance with Fred Astaire and Sid Charisse, and Olivia and I played around and just taught that to ourselves. But I wasn't that familiar with a lot of other Fred Astaire work, but I knew Michael loved Fred Astaire. So I looked at some Fred Astaire things and pictures and stuff, not the movies yet, and I thought, okay, this could be a fun thing in an underground club in Chicago, let's say, in the 40s or something. And when I presented it to Mike, he just went through the roof. He was like, yes, that's it. The fans will love it. The fans will love it. And every time we did something, it was all about the fans. Yeah. He was so appreciative of the fans. And he believed in his heart of hearts that the reason that he was where he was because of the fans, was the people who loved him and supported him. And really that was it. And everything that we ever did, he always said that, if I brought an idea that he was a little skeptical about, he would say, I'm not sure if the fans are going to like that. And then we would moderate it a little bit, change it a little bit. Yeah, that's great. That's great. In rehearsals, what would happen, each one was different. Sometimes, for Smooth Criminal, for example, he was in recording the rest of his CD. So I cast it by myself. I put everything together by myself. And I would go to his home a couple days a week. I would shoot everything, go to his home and show him what I had done. And the fun part about that was every time I went, he said, I love it, but don't you think you need a few more dancers? Yeah, Mike, I do, Well, why don't we get 10 more dancers? So by the end, I think we had 70 dancers or something on that music video, music short film. Phenomenal because of him. But on that, we only had a few rehearsals together before I threw him in the mix with everybody, teaching him the basic step, boom, boom thing that repeats itself throughout. And the incredible thing about him, many incredible things, but this man was a perfectionist. He would stand, and this is the truth, he would stand in front of the mirror. He would say to me, Vincent, don't let anybody bother me, meaning any of the people that were working for him when we were in a studio by ourselves. Don't let anybody interrupt me. He would stand in front of that mirror 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and do the same exact 3 counts of 8 again and again and again and again till I was ready to throw up. But he did it, and he kept doing it, and he kept doing it because he wanted it to be perfect. And by the time we finished rehearsals and he stepped into those kids in the middle of everybody, you would think that he had created the steps himself. That's the kind of person he was. every once in a while, like he had done with Michael Peters, he would say to me, what about if we try it out on this beat? Or I feel it more, you gotta feel it, he'd always say. I wanna feel it. And if he didn't feel it on a beat I had put it on, he'd put it on another beat and say, yeah, ooh, that feels good. That feels so good. I feel it now. And that's the way he would talk. He was music, you know. Two people I've worked with in my career that I felt were equal to the word music, Björk and Michael Jackson. Of everybody. Now, I'm not talking about musicians like Ray Charles or someone, but I'm talking about people who were actor, dancer, singers, you know, that I had the opportunity to play with physically. But both of them, they treated it the same way. They treated it from the inside out. They wanted to know about character. They wanted to know about what's my motivation here? What should I be thinking about when I'm doing this movement? And of course, you know, going all the way back to Dickinson, that was my dream. That's what I loved more than anything, was being able to take a dance step and say, you know, it's not just a dance step. I remember a step that I gave for a concert that went like this, you know, and you went up reaching past your hand and people would just put it up their body. And I said, no, first of all, feel the palm of your hand. Now, put your hand against your leg. Now feel the palm against your leg. Feel that. Now, feel it drift up your body. Feel what's going on inside of your body. Feel your heartbeat. Feel your blood flowing. Feel the sense of the warmth of the skin of your cheek against your hand, so that when you finally do reach up as far as you can, it's your entire essence of spirit as well as your physicality that's reaching for the sky, you know? And these are the kind of things that not only the dancers that I got to work with, but Michael and Madonna too, but really Michael and Björk, they loved that kind of information. They loved that kind of information.
It's back to Jesus. You're back there, just transcending the body.
You know, aren't we all? I mean, look, I was first raised as a Catholic, and you know, but there were a lot of things I disagreed with, and I had a lot of problems with the nuns, and I would get slapped a lot because I would ask questions like, "Sister, why would Jesus let a baby not go to heaven if it died before it was baptized? Paterson, get over here." And I'd put my hands out and get slapped with a ruler. Don't ask us questions like that. So I've had a lot of problems with religion through my life. Religion was a minor of mine at Dickinson as well, because I was always fascinated by it. And I don't think of myself as a religious man, but I certainly think of myself as a spiritual man. And I do believe that art and spirituality must operate hand in hand. I know my people that I can see here who participate in all kinds of different forms of, whether it's my friend Turco, who built greenhouses, or BJ, who grows the most amazing vegetables from a garden that you would salivate over. These are all acts of love, you know, and here I go again, sorry. But, you know, when I see anybody put themselves into what they believe is important for them, and especially when it betters not only themselves, but the world in some way, that to me is spirituality. There's no difference, you know. It's you attaching yourself to something that's so deep inside and something that's so connected to something outside that you just hope that you bring that honesty to it when you become the translator, you know. And that's what I feel. I feel like I've been fortunate enough to be able to stick my finger into the electric socket of universal creativity and get all of this charges coming through me. And my task is to translate it and give it out there. And I feel that if I can move anybody with some tiny little bit of something, you know, if I can just throw a little pebble in that pond and a little ripple moves throughout the world, sorry, I get very emotional, can make things better, then I've done a good job.
Well, absolutely, Vince. And I think that I think, you know, when I was just trying to sort of psychologically analyze you through reading your autobiography. I think that there is something about the sort of the deep spirituality of your upbringing and this authenticity and this genuineness that you bring to choreography within this really big pop bubble, big pop commercial culture. And it's just, a precision, an extravagance, but everything seems authentic. It could be very cheesy, but it's not. And I think just hearing you describe the sort of depths of feeling that's seen within these icons that you've worked with, you know? So I wanted to sort of reinforce that. I mean, from my interpretation of what you did, I mean, we're thinking, what makes Vince Paterson different from Tommy Tune or Susan Stroman, but it's what you're saying right now. And I want to kind of to bring that out in this interview.
Well, Sarah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, a lot of that, again, came from having a liberal arts education at Dickinson College, because, when I had so many resources to draw upon, from my art classes, from my art education there, from my history education, from my political science education, from the different, from French drama, German drama, all those things, as I said, I came into this with all that information behind me, with a wealth of information from which to draw. And many, many choreographers, and I am not slighting anybody in the least, but they didn't have a liberal arts education. They went from high school just into working and being in the business, but also being fortunate enough to work with the caliber of people I did, not just the entertainers, but Michael Jackson loved art. Madonna loved art. I mean, I remember when I was doing Evita and the movie Evita, and I then met with her in New York before we went to England to shoot the second half of the film. And I went into her penthouse on Central Park West, and she had art like you could not believe, but she had a painting of one of Picasso's paintings of Dora Mars hanging on the wall. And I went over to it and I said, Madonna, is this really a Dora Mars? And she said, yes, it is. For people that don't know, Dora Mars was one of Picasso's lovers, and he painted a lot of paintings of her throughout his life. But anyway, I said, can I touch it? And she said, go ahead, you can touch it. So I actually got to touch a Picasso. It was, so it wasn't like I worked with idiots, I had the joy of working with people who really did have an appreciation for art. And, Spielberg and Mike Nichols and Lars von Trier. I mean, these are artists, they're not just movie makers or creating, this kind of musical theater, which I never really liked. These are people who believed in messages and who believed like I do. And there's ways of changing the world through art. And, whether it's dance or theater or these other, mediums that many of these people that are with us today work in. So.
Right. Well, there's so much I wanted to ask you more about these iconic moves you made in Smooth Criminal, the crotch grab, which you're famous for.
Oh, I'll tell you about the crotch grab because I like that.
We have to move on to questions, but.
Well, this is a fun story, because what happened is so many people said to me, oh, did you create the moonwalk? Did you create the moonwalk? And I said, and I can say, no, but I created the crotch grab. It'll be on, well, I won't have a tombstone, but somebody can say it when they throw my ashes around. But anyway, but the way that happened was very funny. Michael and I were in a rehearsal studio, and I'll try to stand up if I have a little room here. But so I was just working, and I was doing a little move that kind of went like this. And Michael went, what's that? What'd you just do? I said, what? He goes, you did something like this. I said, oh, I don't know. I was just moving. He goes, I want to do it. I want to do it. So then he said, let's put that in there. So in the video, The Way You Make Me Feel, in the short film, The Way You Make Me Feel, we did a version. And the thing is, they actually cut out the moment when the hand goes to the crotch. So you don't see that final thing. But after that, I mean, well, you well know, everybody did it. And I kind of thought that I might have force myself to maybe not go to heaven when I went to a Britney Spears concert just to see what that was about years and years ago. And here she was singing up on the stage, "I'm your slave." And here's all these 6-year-old girls going down and grabbing their crotches. And I thought, oh my God, I'm condemned to hell. I know I am. Plus the Pope had told me I was anyway. When the Blonde Ambition tour went to Rome, and the Pope said, "With the Blonde Ambition tour, Satan has been re-released into the world." And I kind of smiled.
Yes, that's right. The Blonde Ambition. He called it one of the most satanic shows in human history.
Exactly.
So, there you go. Boy, Jesus.
It was all in fun, though. It was all in fun, I mean, it was, nothing was meant to be, rude or anything. It was humor. It was humor. But there's not a lot of humor in the Catholic Church, but anyway, getting a little better.
Getting better. Well, just to wrap up my portion, I just encourage everybody, just go on YouTube and look at some of these things. Even if you saw them years ago, go back and now look at them again, especially Smooth Criminal, the staging, the choreography. Look at Dancer in the Dark. The Bjork scenes are just phenomenal with the camera angles and the dancing. Of course, if you go back now in this context and look at Madonna's Like a Prayer, Like a Virgin, Express Yourself. I mean, it's all really, in this moment, it has a different kind of read. And I just hope everybody knows the man behind the throne should be sitting on it.
Oh, please.
Thank you, Vincent. Now
let me just say one thing about Dancer in the Dark, because that was one of my most incredible experiences. And, I was pulled into that to be a choreographer. And when I got there, Lars was an amazing person who gave me complete and total freedom to do anything I wanted to do. I rewrote those scenes with him. He was such an amazing man and so supportive and so believing in my work. Then one day I was waiting for another actor, an older man, to come in. We were going to shoot a scene dancing with Björk, and I said, "Lars, I need you to, where's the man? I need to have this man. Where is he?" And he said, "Vincent, I found him." And I said, "Great, fantastic. When am I going to meet him?" "You're going to meet him now, Vincent." And he put his arm around me and he led me over to the mirror and he goes, "Here he is, Vincent." And I said, no. I don't act anymore, Lars. I don't do that, And he said, but Vincent, I've been watching you in rehearsals and you're exactly what I was wanting. And I know I had thought the man was much older, but I really wanted you to do it. And I said, "Let me think about it, Lars." And I came home and I had some friends and I said, "What do you guys think?" I didn't come home. I went back to my home in Denmark at the time. And I wrote a couple emails. What do you think? What do you think? And I remember a friend of mine, Lang Bensing, who also went to college with us. And he wrote, "Are you out of your mind to say no to being in scenes with Björk and Catherine Deneuve? Are you crazy?" And I said, "Okay, Lars, I'll do it." And so I had a great deal of fun. So now I was choreographing and acting a little bit in the film. And then Lars decided he wanted to man the one handheld camera that would shoot the focus of the dramatic parts of the show. So he said, "I have an idea of shooting all of these dance sequences with 100 small DV cameras." I didn't quite understand the philosophy. He sat down and talked to me about it. And the whole idea was to create the dance from beginning to end, set up 100 cameras, all attached. Everybody starts at the beginning of the dance. We put the 100 cameras anywhere that I wanted to put them with him. The two of us would put them wherever. You press record, and that was it. All 100 cameras shot at the same time. The dancers and actors started from the beginning of the song all the way through the end, and we maybe only had to do it 3 times, and that was the end. So the prep for a shoot day was intense, but the shoot day itself took half a day, But it was phenomenal, and I learned so much from him, from Mike Nichols, who was just an incredible mentor for me. Brought me in. Actually, he had, funny you mentioned Tommy Tune. He had asked Tommy Tune to choreograph The Birdcage, and I knew I was destined to do that movie. I knew it. And so I asked my agent, Julie McDonald, who I think is on here too. And I said, "Julie, you've got to get me a meeting with Mike Nichols. You have to." And she said, I don't really know him, but I'll do my best. So she wrote to him and he flew me to New York, and I sat and I met with him, and he told me he had already asked Tommy Tune, why should he do me? Why should he change and hire me instead? And I said, because I know how to make a woman look great. Consequently, I know how to make drag queens look fantastic. So I said, and you're not talking about old drag queens. We're talking about updating this. I'm telling you, Mike, I can do this. I can give you everything you want. He not only hired me, Sarah, he brought me in from day one. I was in the room from day one, from the table readings with all of those people sitting around the table. I was there through the whole entire movie. It was phenomenal. The night before, he would say that we were going to shoot a scene the next day. He would sit with me. Do you see any movement happening here? Yeah, Mike, you know, when they all come in and they come and visit them in the house and their apartment, I can teach them all how to move a little bit so they all look comfortable. Great, great. Hey, Mike, you know that little scene where Aguilar, the maid, so to speak, dances into the kitchen? I can give him a little dance step to do, you know? And then the tour de force was this great surprise when Robin Williams, who I'd worked with several times, I directed him in a couple little projects that I had done. He came up to me and he said, Vince, please, you got to help me. I'm so tired of playing the straight man. I've got to do something funny. I've got to do something funny. Can you come up with something? And I said, give me 5 minutes. Give me until the next break. And he said, okay. So I went behind the set and I came up with The History of Dance in 30 Seconds. And Mike and Robin came running back behind. Do you have anything for me? Yeah, Robin, I do. I think you can do it. I think it's going to be easy. I think it's going to be great. So we go out to shoot the scene, and it's not written, of course. Nobody knows it's going to happen. And Robin does, he said, what do I do? Just stand there like an object? And Robin goes, no, you do an eclectic history of the dance. You do Fosse, Martha Graham, and Madonna, and Twyla. Anyway, everybody cracked up. The cameras were rolling. Everybody cracked up. And so the take was done. Mike said, that was great. Let's do the real one. And Robin said, well, that wasn't an ad lib. Vince made that up for me back there. And Mike said, well, that was really good. Now let's go back to the script. And Robin got down on his hands and knees and crawled across the set to Mike, who was sitting in his little director's chair, and said, please, Mike, please, let's do it again. Please, let me do it again. So Mike said, all right, look, let's do a couple takes without it, the way Elaine May wrote it, and then we'll put it in, but don't be surprised if it doesn't wind up in the final cut. As those people who've seen The Birdcage, it's one of the highlights of the film. So it's, you know, it's one of those special, precious moments that the universe gives you. And, you know, because again, you have your finger stuck in that electric socket, stuff comes through, and stuff that makes a lot of people happy. Many people have laughed over that scene, and couldn't make me any more pleased. So.
Since these stories are great, we could just go on and on, or we could have a 5-part series with you, but I'd like people to have the opportunity to ask some questions.
Cool.
If you have a question for Vince, please use the raise hand feature.
Hi, Deb.
I will call on you as
Yeah.
them come in.
Oh my gosh, I'm seeing all these people. There's some hands raised. You want to pick them?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking for the actual raise hand. Let me look. Okay, go ahead, Elizabeth. Oh, do you have you popped up there? All right. If you do want to react, well, let's see here. Where's the raise hand? Oh, here we go. So Jim Sheldrake has a question.
Jimmy.
Yeah. As one of the wallflowers, it was in the high school cafeteria watching you dance with all our girls. I appreciate very much hearing how you turned your passion into achieving excellence in such a fine way, and you never gave up. A lot of us had our aspirations going into college. And as you did, you went in with one thinking and it shifted. And I applaud you for that. You've been an incredible example and model for a lot of people. And I hope many people read your autobiography. And I know you're still looking for some part-time work out there. And I hope there's a lot of mentoring, because what you have, Vincent, I almost said your high school name, sorry. What you have, Vincent, is an incredible passion that young artists need to hear about. And I hope you go forward with that. And again, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Thank you so much. You know, my book only came out in French, and I'm trying to see if I can get the rights and have it done in English. And I was telling Sarah and Lars at the beginning here that those people, a lot of kids in Europe who could read it in French, have written to me and told me that one of the beautiful things about the book is that I write about some of the failures too. And it was that was kind of the most inspiring to them, because they knew all of the success. Oh, Kim's showing the book right now. But you know, the failures are what kind of inspired a lot of these young kids, because they said, you know, we only see the results of the positive things that happen, and we never hear so much about how difficult it was. So I'm hoping that I can get it translated and published in English, because it's fun, first of all, and it's interesting to understand what people are, these amazing celebrities are like behind the scenes and how they work, and also because I talk about myself and my life and my process, and I think for a lot of artists, especially young artists, but any artist, it kind of gives you a little guidance, and it lets you know that you're not alone. You know, sometimes being an artist can be a very lonely thing, and because it's all work from inside, what touches us the deepest. And when a lot of these kids found out that it wasn't all easy for me, I think it gave them the kind of the strength to push through some of these hard times and realize that it is a roller coaster ride. The whole thing is a roller coaster ride. The highs couldn't be higher, and the lows couldn't be lower. You know, I mean, also in my book, and I told Sarah this was cool that I would probably mention this, but you know, there was a time in my life when I thought I was going to commit suicide, and I actually bought a gun, and I went up to a hotel in Santa Barbara, and I put the gun in my mouth, and I was ready to pull the trigger, and the most ridiculous thing happened. The phone rang, and I was pulled out of it, and I picked it up, and the lady at the front counter said, "Do you need any ice?" And it was like, that brought me back, you know, and here I was, all these successes I had had, and this was at the beginning of like 2001 or something, and you know, and nothing was happening for me. Nothing. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't get hired. Nobody wanted me. And you know what it did? It made me realize that, yes, art is a great deal of who I am, and art is what's in my heart, and art is what's in my DNA and the very soul of who I am as a human being. But life is more important, and love is more important, and friendship and family is more important. So I've been very happy to have all that support for me to be able to be an artist. And for people, you know, my mom could never support me financially, but my mom always supported my heart, you know, and yeah, so.
Catherine
Next
Engel.
question before I turn into a blubbering idiot.
Catherine Engel.
Yes, hi there. Hi, Vince. It's great to see you.
Hi, nice to see you
It's been a
too.
long time.
Oh.
Hey, look, man, I got to say, you got to remember some of the first dancing you ever did was with the Modern Dance Company, 1970. Me, you, Carol Marcy, Greg Coster. We danced to the Rolling Stones, and then the Beatles, the Mime Troupe all danced with the Beatles. I mean, we were pretty avant-garde then, you know.
It's true.
But I've always admired you and followed your career. And I just want to say, back from those times being in theater and the mime troupe and dance, you were the most charismatic person in all those fields at the time. And I knew you would make it, and I knew it. You were so, I wish I had followed the rock star thing, but I knew you would make it, and you did. You were such a talent, you know, so.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It's great to see you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being here. Really.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Betsy Maddox.
I just want to say it's such an honor to be on this call with all of you, and such an honor, Vincent, to see your face and to meet you. I have a question. I know that Michael Jackson was known to be such a practical joker, and you seem so free, and I'm sure he pulled you in on some of those. I don't know if you have a story that you share around any of his practical jokes.
Well, I do have one fun one. When we were shooting Black or White, Macaulay Culkin was on the set, and he was a little kid, and I put him in one little part when the kids are on the like a front stoop of like a townhouse or something. He's in that. But anyway, one day Michael said to me, "Vince, come on." So I went with him, and we went up onto the roof at the Culver Studios, and he had someone bring up a huge box of water balloons, and Michael and Macaulay Culkin and I threw water balloons down on everybody who was walking on this anywhere on the lot. And then we would hide, and then we would sneak up a little bit and throw more water balloons at people until like the security guards came up to see who it was. And when they saw that it was Michael, they were like, oh, sorry, Mr. Jackson. Sorry, Mr. Jackson. But no, we used to do a lot of fun things. Another really funny thing that happened when, this is not a practical joke, but it was a funny situation. When I was doing Smooth Criminal, Mike said, "Why don't you come over to the house? I want to show you a black and white film called The Third Man," I think it was. And so I went over to watch it with him, and he had a little movie theater in his house, about 20 seats. And he also had his chimpanzee at the time, Bubbles, you know? So Michael made some popcorn, and he brought it out, and the two of us are having popcorn. Well, Bubbles went crazy. Bubbles wanted popcorn. So Bubbles started running around and jumping behind us and grabbing the popcorn, and Michael kept yelling, "Bubbles, get out of here, get out of here." And then at one point, Michael threw a shoe at Bubbles, not to hurt him, but to like get him away. And then he turned around and said, "Vincent, please don't tell anybody I threw a shoe at Bubbles. The SPCA will come and arrest me." So, but no, he was great. You know, we had some very, very heartfelt talks. He had a father who was very difficult, and I had a father who was very difficult. And we had a lot of similarities in terms of stories to share like that. He was very close to his mom, as I'm very close to my mom, and his sisters. And I'm very close to my sister as well. So we had a lot of things in common, you know, and also, you know, I'm a kind of quiet guy. I don't really brag about the things I've done. I enjoy talking about them in a situation like this, but, you know, I don't really go out and announce that I did this. And Michael was the same way. I mean, he had celebrity thrown upon him, and from a very early age, but inside he was just a very humble, sweet, quiet, shy human being. It was hard to imagine, you know, and then he would get out there and the music would start and he would turn into a monster. I mean, I just had never seen a transformation happen like that, where I've mentioned this before, and this is honestly the truth. You could actually feel this energy that emanated from his body when you danced alongside of him. Never, ever had I before or since experienced that with anybody but Michael Jackson, ever. There was something about him that was a little otherworldly. It's just a shame, everything that happened. And it was just too much of a burden for him to take, I know. It was just too much. One can't even begin to imagine what it's like when your entire life is taken away. You don't have a life anymore. You just are that personality that everybody wants to put their own references on, their own needs upon, you know, and you almost don't know who you are anymore, you know, when you're by yourself. But anyway, I'm grateful for every minute I had to spend with him, every moment. There was never a negative moment ever, ever. So.
Thank
Rita, you have a question. Rita?
Hi, Vincent.
Hi, Rita.
Hi from Oklahoma.
You're in Oklahoma.
Yes, Ice Storm USA. But anyway, thank you for all the work that you've done and the art that you've created over the decades. I really appreciate all that you've contributed to the world that will ripple into eternity. So thank you so much for contributing yourself. And that's very much needed. And so now you're going into maybe writing songs. I like the song that you wrote with
Thank
Renee.
you.
All comes down to you. I voted today, so
Thank you, honey.
Peace, love, and all that.
Yeah.
I'd like to know, you talk about choreographers getting credit and how maybe new laws can be written or something can be done so that the people who are involved in creating the art, just like songwriters and have the lyricists and composers and such, when you're talking about choreographers.
Yeah.
I don't know if you already discussed this, but maybe is there some way that choreographers can start getting actual credit, royalties, etc.
Yeah. Could you do me a favor? I'm going to answer this, Rita, but thank you, because there's a lot of noise behind you. Yeah, this is the plight of being a choreographer. It's a very, very sad situation for people that don't know. Choreographers have no union outside of Broadway. On Broadway, choreographers have a union. Thank God, Bob Fosse was very powerful for a period of time, and he put his foot down. He was being asked to to choreograph every show that happened, and he finally said, I won't do it unless we start a union. And so he began a union for choreographers that directors became part of as well, but it was primarily for choreographers, and it covers Broadway. But in the electronic medium, in the rock and roll medium, in all those worlds, there's no union for choreographers, nothing. Meaning, I don't own one piece of work that I have ever created, not one step that I have ever created for Madonna, Michael, for anybody. I don't own anything. If I actually tried to teach these and they wanted, they could come and fine me, sue me, because none of this is mine. The consequence has been that other people have replicated my work and called it their own. I won't mention names, not important, but those people know who they are. And even with credit, you look at a film, and unless you have an amazing body of work behind you, or the director loves you, as I was fortunate enough to be loved by people like Mike Nichols and Alan Parker and Lars von Trier, and they would give me credit at the beginning of the film. You are lucky if you ever see a choreographer's name at the final roll. When all of those credits go by, 99% of the time, the choreographer will not be listed. The animal trainer will be listed. The people that catered the food will be listed. The people that drove the ambulance will be listed. The people that drove the limousines for the star will be listed. The choreographer will not be listed. So this is a difficult plight. I tried for 30 years to establish some kind of union. The problem is it takes a lot of money to create a new union. So that's almost impossible. The other problem is that Directors Guild consists with producers and directors, and they don't want to divide up their take. They don't want to give you a little bit of their money. They don't want to do it. They don't have to. So they just don't. And they don't want you to be part of their union, because if they did, then you would have to have a little cut of the pie. And that's just the way it is. So you have to hope that you have enough clout behind you or enough work behind you that when you go in to meet somebody, that's one of the first conversations that your agent has once the negotiations begin, that you either have to have upfront main title credit, or that you have credit somewhere in the last crawl. But it's a really, really sad situation. And I don't know if it will ever be rectified. the thing about dance, as those of you who have danced or know dancers, your lifespan is fairly short. Actors can go till they're 900 and keep on going. Film directors, the same thing. Dancers don't last that long. And the same thing with choreographers, because their bodies give out often too. So you never have the same group of people who can continue a fight that can stay strong over a decade or 2 decades, because everybody's coming and going and coming and going and coming and going. And you never have a constant body of people who can argue this problem and come out with something positive. So it's a real sad state of affairs. One thing I'm happy about is that with the advent and now the popularity of so many dance shows on television, the choreographers who create for them, whether it's So You Think You Can Dance or Dancing with the Stars or J-Lo show World of Dance, oftentimes the choreographer gets recognition. And this is fantastic. Unfortunately, they get recognition for 30 seconds of something. You know, those people who work their asses off and do entire films out, you know, half an hour, 35, 40 minutes of choreography might not get their name on the film. So, you know, it's a strange world, and I hope it changes someday. I've kind of stepped away from that fight now, but it was something that I was intensely involved in for a long, long time. So I wish it would change.
Are there any other questions?
Anybody else?
I got a question.
Yeah. Oh, Michael, an alumni.
Yeah. First off, what a treat hearing your reminiscence, and well, what a pleasure and an honor it's been to see your career unfold. I've been incredibly proud as a fellow mermaid player to see, you know, your progress and the impact you've had on the industry. And this is a wonderful man on many, many levels. I'm so thrilled to run into you this past year in person here in Los Angeles. And it's funny, my route to Dickinson was similar to yours. I thought that law might be the way I would go as well. And how crazy that the closest I ever got to being a lawyer was playing one in The Imaginary Invalid. That was it. That's as far as I got, because the liberal arts education at Dickinson that gave me the opportunity to, on an extracurricular front, be on the radio station, be in the theater group, be the features editor of the paper. That's how I ended up pursuing my life and my career. So it's been a thrill.
Tell them what you do. Tell them what you do. Tell them what you do. Yeah.
What's new with me?
No, tell them what you do.
Oh, I mean, print and broadcast journalist. I was the pop music critic for the San Francisco Chronicle. I was on radio in San Francisco and continue to be on radio in San Francisco doing film and movies and pop music coverage. KGO Radio, if anybody wants to check it in. KGO Radio streaming live on Friday mornings, 11:35 generally with the Mark Thompson Show. But I also do screenwriting and animation development. I currently have a deal at Sony, which is really pretty terrific for somebody who was in the class of '72. I'm still, you know, beating the bulrushes, if you will. And yeah, you know, I can't stop. No retirement. But what I wanted to say was one of my great joys was seeing your work in Dancer in the Dark. And I was always wondering, because honestly, as a fan of Catherine Deneuve's work, she didn't do much in the way of musicals other than Umbrellas of Cherbourg and Young Girls of Rochefort. What was it like working with her as a choreographer?
You know, it was so interesting because so many people told me, be careful, she's going to be this major diva. I said, listen, I've dealt with divas. I know divas, you know, divas don't stress me out. Well, the funny thing was with Catherine, they were all concerned because, you know, she was Catherine Deneuve. But what happened, the production company that Lars had was so, I don't even know how to say, socialistic, perhaps I could say, that when Catherine arrived at the airport, there wasn't a limousine that picked her up. There was a PA who had a Volkswagen, and it was the first time this girl had ever driven a Volkswagen. So the story Catherine told me was, Catherine got in the car. By the time they got out of the airport, the girl had stalled the car 3 times. And Catherine said, "Get the fuck out of the driver's seat. I'm taking over the wheel," and drove herself to the hotel. So that was kind of her introduction to working at Zentropa. And so that kind of set the stage and set the mood. And she was so kind and amenable. And, you know, we would have rehearsals, and we'd have a break, and Lars von Trier would come over with a bottle of schnapps or a couple bottles of schnapps, and everybody would go out on the lawn, including Catherine, and we'd all sit around and talk, and everybody have a shot of schnapps and then go back in and work again. She was absolutely adorable. The thing that was most difficult for Catherine was ad-libbing, and because that's the way the script was created. Lars did write a script. However, what we would do is he would be sure that on the first take, we would speak the words exactly as he had written. And we only did that maybe once or twice. I'm talking about the dramatic scenes, not the dance scenes. After that, he wanted us to improvise. He wanted to take the idea of what he had written and then just run with it. And a great deal of the film, I'm going to say 95% of that film is improvisation. Now, we were using the ideas that he had created, but it was all our own dialogue that we made up at the time and how it worked, and then how he eventually cut it. But that was what was most difficult for Catherine, was kind of ad-libbing and improvising. She had never really worked that way before, but it didn't bother her. After the first thing, the first take that we did was in the dance studio that actually opens the film, and she had to do crazy stuff like, you know, bark like a dog, and I mean, it was, you know, once you start working that way, there was no going back to the other way. The formalities were gone. She was a doll. She was an absolute doll. So,
Jonathan Norton.
Hi. Hi, Mr. Patterson. I just wanted to say that the Bad Tour was my first concert ever. And I will always forever remember and cherish that night. And so I just want to thank you for that. And it's such a thrill and an honor to be able to share space with you in this way. And also, I was wondering and hoping if you could share with the group a little bit about how you came up with the concept, the Marie Antoinette concept for Vogue, because I've always loved this story. I don't know if I read it or if I saw like a YouTube interview or something like years ago, but I've always loved the story of it, and like also like figuring out how to get around the censors and that whole thing. I just love. So yeah.
Well, what happened was the Blonde Ambition tour had ended, and Madonna was asked to do MTV. And she called me up and said, well, I think I'm going to do Vogue. And I think I'm going to do it with, and I want you to choreograph it for me, please. And I think I'm going to do the girls and me in men's suits, and I'm going to put the guys in skirts. And I said, oh, Madonna, come on. That's so old. That's been done before, you know, let's move on. All right. The cross-dressing thing. Come on. We already did that. Move forward. And I said, look, I helped you with the video Vogue. I didn't choreograph the Vogue moves. It was 2 guys from New York, but I did put all of those steps together to create the Vogue dance. So I said, I worked on the video for you. I created a different version for the Blonde Ambition tour. I don't know if I can come up with another idea. Let me go into a rehearsal studio and I'll think about it. Well, I happen to have these fans that I was once asked by Diana Ross to put a concert together for her. And I'm not even going to go into that story, but it didn't turn out. So, but I was left with these fans. And I thought, there's something about these fans. Let me take these into the studio. So I went into the studio and I started to play, and I thought, wow, this kind of feels like court gesturing in the time of Marie Antoinette or something, maybe something like this. Marie Antoinette, wow, Madonna's never come up with an idea like that. Every time we see her, she likes to have a new personality, but she's never done Marie Antoinette. And I don't remember seeing Marie Antoinette anywhere lately in a long time. So I called her up and I said, Madonna, I have an incredible idea. What? Marie Antoinette, you as Marie Antoinette. That sounds like a fucked up idea. I said, thank you, Madonna. That's why I love you, honey. I said, well, why don't you get your ass down to the studio, see what I'm doing. If you think it's fun, we'll do it. If you don't think it's fun, no hard feelings, you can get somebody else. So she came down and I was showing her what I did and she fell in love with it. And another fun little thing happened. LA had one of our minor earthquakes during that little period. And I grabbed Madonna and grabbed her and hugged her underneath the sill of one of the doors, you know, and we just hugged through the earthquake. And I'll never forget that. That was a great moment. But that's kind of how the whole idea came about. Just something as stupid as that, as some fans, you know, literally. Yeah. Simple idea. And yeah, that was it.
And MTV couldn't censor it.
Well, no, they couldn't censor it, and there wasn't anything, you know, I mean, it was live, so there was nothing they could do, and, you know, there was anything really bad there. And by that time, they knew Madonna, and as long as she wasn't going to expose her breasts completely, I'm sure they were fine. You know, so anyway, but thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
All right, just a couple questions, and then we will close this evening. Rita asks, she'd like to know more about your experience with the Debbie Reynolds dance floor that you were able to dance on, and actual wood boards available for people to own a piece of it.
Oh, yes. Well, what happened was there was a famous dance studio here in Los Angeles that Debbie Reynolds, the famous actress, had created. And it was a phenomenal space that through the years, many, many people had gone through there. And oh yeah, and I see Bill has one of the boards, he's showing it right now. Anyway, what happened was they were going to tear down the studio and build condos. And everyone was so sad and depressed. I actually taught the last class that they ever had there. It was a big Thriller class, and like 250 people or something, I think, showed up, and it was an amazing, amazing experience. But when they were tearing up all the floors, I asked the owner if I could get the floorboards from one of the dance rooms that I had done, where we had done Thriller, where I had worked with, done a lot of other pieces with Michael Jackson at the studio, and they said yes. Now, I took the boards. I didn't know what I was going to do with them. I was then informed by a friend of mine who was a dancer that I had never known this, and she had hidden it from all of us for years and years and years. She had been on dialysis for 10 years as a dancer. Every night she would go home and be on dialysis for 8 hours a night and still get up and still audition and still work as a dancer and as a young actress, but as a dancer. And I thought, wow, maybe I could do something with these boards that would kind of help her and maybe support her and give her some money. At the same time, I ran into a girl who I had known for a long time, again, was unaware that she had a charity, a company actually, and she brought artists into the poorest schools in Los Angeles for kindergarten, first and second grades, that if the school could provide them with a piece of the funding, that she would try to get the rest of the funding. And it was to teach music, dance, theater, and music, dance, theater. There was one other thing, I can't remember what it is. Well, kind of writing, because the kids were asked to learn how to write their own stories and recite those stories in a theatrical kind of situation. So I wound up taking these boards. A friend came and helped me cut them. I designed them with a little logo on them that said Debbie Reynolds Studio with the years that it existed. And I sold them, and I wound up being able to give $13,000 to Danielle, who was the dancer, who was on dialysis, who now just got a kidney last January. Because of all of this, she got a kidney. With all of this publicity that everything, someone gave her a kidney. So she's fine now. And I gave another $13,000 to Bunny Hull, and there's a picture of it, the Debbie Reynolds Studios right there. But I gave the other $13,000 so that I think it wound up being 250 children could take 10-week sessions of these art seminars. So that's what happened with the boards.
Wow.
Something much
All right.
bigger than I ever imagined, you know.
Two final questions. What do you think is on the horizon for you?
What do I think of what?
What do you think is on your horizon?
Well, that's a hard one, because none of us really know what's going to happen right now. You know, I mean, I certainly, you know, my own opinion is I pray that we have a change of leadership here for many, 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 many reasons, and especially to get some grace and art back into our lives, and kindness and love and goodness, and people not hating each other, and people being able to communicate and speak once again. So I've been very active with that. My husband and I and a great composer from England, John Cameron, wrote a song. It all comes down to you, and I made a little video for it, encouraging people to vote, and it's on my Facebook page if you want to take a look at it. But more important, it's just important that everybody has a voice, and I just hope that we have a situation where we can all come back again to being in a country that we love, and not have as much animosity amongst us all, that we can find a happy medium. I mean, we will always have clashes, and that's part of what happens in a democracy, but this has not been a good last 4 years as far as I'm concerned. In terms of work, I have been working for 2.5, almost 3 years on a project, a new musical project, original musical project in Europe that I will hopefully direct. That, of course, has been suspended as theaters have closed, but I'm praying that comes back. On the immediate horizon, I'm going to direct a little promo for a Russian school here in Los Angeles. It's a little Russian art school for kids from like 5 to 11 years old. And I'm going to just create a promo for them. So I'm doing that. And that's it. That's what my horizon is, day by day. I don't think any of us have ever kind of lived like this before. And we've all been so spoiled being Americans. We've just never had restrictions placed upon us. And you would think that wearing a mask was like asking us to cut off our arm or something. You know, I've been fortunate enough to work all over the world, and I've seen what suppression can be and repression can be, and what people are asked to do that they might not like to do, but for the good of the country have to do. We've never been asked that before. And I just wish a few more people were a little bit more generous in caring about everybody else, not just themselves. It's not a hard step to take.
And our last question of the evening is from Vincent Acaro.
Yeah.
Hi, Vince. You know, first of all, I spent a lot of time with this guy, Vince Paterson, him sharing his talents with me and everybody else around him.
Let me stop for a second. So Vince had his own production company called Dark Light Pictures, and he kindly hired me to be a commercial director for his company. As well, he produced Michael Jackson's short film, Blood on the Dance Floor. So anyway.
And the first commercial, I had never done a commercial with dancing in it. And of course, the first commercial I got for Vince to do had dancing in it. And I made the schedule. And I said, Vince, I just want to go over the schedule with you. We have 5 rehearsal days in for the dancers. And Vince looked at me and he said, Vince, the dancers already know how to dance. And so I was able to shorten that up considerably. But the greatest thing Vince Paterson ever did for me was about 18 months ago. I called him and I said, Vince, I've got a little problem here. I go, my daughter's getting married. I've got to do the father-daughter dance. And I have a real problem. And he said, well, do you have any idea what you'd like to do? And I go, well, naturally, I'd like to do the, sorry about that. I'd like like to do the Travolta. I'd like to do the Travolta, Uma Thurman dance from Pulp Fiction. And he said, no problem, no problem. I'll be over tomorrow. He came over the next day with Jackie Evans. And my daughter and I were there. They taught us how these steps. We did it. We were a big hit at the wedding. And right now, that daughter is in active labor with her first baby.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, I love this guy I love. So it's great watching and listening to all this today. Thank you.
Vince. Thank you, Vince. Thank you for your support and belief in me for all those years too. I really appreciate it. And I know we're wrapping up. And again, before I start crying again, I just want to say thank you everybody for spending this time together. I just, it would be even more beautiful if we were all sitting in a room together. And, but, just seeing all your gorgeous faces in my life, so many people, it's just been so beautiful to be here. And I'm so appreciative of Andrea, who I met first coming out here after all those years at Dickinson to talk to me about alumni occurrences, and Michael Snyder, who then met Andrea too. I mean, through my husband's concert one night in a club at the Viper Room, I think it was. I mean, how crazy all of this, we just never know how we're going to meet each other, or who we're going to know, or how our lives interchange with each other. And here's this incredible man here, Bill Solomon, who was one of my younger brother's best friends and who has done so much to help out disaster situations in Haiti. And, I look at all of you on here and I know what dear people you are and how much you've given the world. And, I'm just honored to be your friend and honored to have shared my life with you. So thank you so much. And thank you, Laura and Andrea and Sarah, especially for inviting me to do this and for
so generous.
spend this time with everybody. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This was very generous of you to give your time. You're going to have me crying now. But thank you both. So thank you everybody for joining us. I mean, it was just such a nice, enjoyable evening, something we all needed right now. We could just go on and on, but to our participants, thank you for hanging in there. We had a great time chatting with you. I know Vincent is just so thrilled. As I sent him the list, he just was so excited every time we saw more and more names on the list.
Oh,
we'll send out a link to this recording afterwards, so you can watch it again, you can share it, whatever. So thank you for joining us. I hope to see you at another virtual event soon, hopefully in person soon. And if you have any questions or anything, you can always email alumni@dickinson.edu. Vincent, thank you so much. It was a lovely.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Happy Halloween.
Vincent.
Happy Halloween. Stay safe. Wear a mask, please. Okay.
Please vote.
Really, for everybody. Okay.
We love you.
I love you all. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
And don't forget to vote.
Okay. Bye.
Love you, Vince.
Bye.